Which digital stressors exist? What are the ways in which work with digital technologies and media creates stress for workers? Well, that's what we investigated in a large-scale study in 2019. First, we did literature research, then interviews, then focus groups, and then a survey with more than 5,000 representatives from the German workforce. And in this, we investigated which and how digital technology and media are used and how this creates stress for the employees. Let's first look at the sample there. It's pretty representative for the German workforce. So it's more than 2,000 females, more than 2,000 males. The contractually agreed upon working time is on average 37.5 hours. The actual working time, our response report, is slightly above that, so rather 40 hours. The age ranges from 18 to 67 years with an average of 43 years. And we had by purpose a bias towards knowledge workers. We oversampled knowledge workers, so people who basically think for a living, who consume and produce knowledge as part of their work, rather than non-knowledge worker. So as said, this distribution, except for this purposeful bias towards knowledge work, is pretty representative for the German workforce if you compare it to data from the Federal Statistical Office, for example. And in the qualitative study and then this quantitative survey, we found out that there are 12 different stressors of digital work, 12 demands from digital work which create stress in the employees. And on this slide, you see the 12 oriented around the digital work demands here in the circle. And with the size of these blue bubbles, you see the intensity with which they are perceived by the respondents. So performance control is the strongest digital work demand, the strongest stressor from digital work. And then invasion of privacy, unreliability, interruptions, and so on, all the way around to a lacking sense of achievement. Now, what are these different stressors? Let's look further into the definitions of them. Performance control. Well, that's the feeling that the use of digital technologies and digital media increases performance monitoring and evaluation. So if you think about storing your documents on a cloud storage, for example, in your company, then others see at which time you access the documents, at which time you edit it and save the documents. Or others see at which time you send emails, how quickly you respond to emails. Or in many instant messaging programs, you have these small lights like yellow, green, red, indicating your availability. And these are some of the means by which some employees perceive that their performance would be monitored. Well, it's not really the performance, it's their availability, the time of work and so on, but many people still relate that to performance. And so these are some of the examples how people feel that they are so subject to surveillance by their colleagues, by their superiors. Closely related to that, but still a distinct factor, is the invasion of privacy. That's the feeling that the use of digital technologies and digital media violates your privacy at work, your personal sphere at work, or even at home. Then the next ones are unreliability and interruptions. Unreliability is the feeling that digital technologies and media used are unreliable and they are not up to their tasks. They don't function properly. The printer is out of order right before the meeting when you try to print the slides, or during a video call, your internet connection is not reliable enough, your virtual private network breaks down, or things like that. These are the typical unreliabilities of digital technologies and media. And interruptions, that's the feeling that there are increased distractions or interruptions due to the use of digital technologies and media. So while you're working on one task, there's a notification that you received a new email and you're distracted by that. Or your smartphone beeps because there's a new instant messaging coming in or the like. So distractions, interruptions from your routine task, and then it takes you some time to focus back on the task you were working on. Overload is the feeling that you need to work more and faster due to the use of digital technologies and media. Because turnaround times are so quick if you send information to colleagues, because there are always new demands coming in your email inbox, in your workflow system or so on. Many employees feel that they need to work faster and more than they would have without digital technologies and media. And then there's uncertainty. That's a feeling that the own skills need to be developed regularly, because of the constant changes and the changes in digital technologies and media. So that's a feeling that the systems never stand still, that they always continue to being developed, that they always have new functionality, new usage patterns, and that you yourself need to learn how to cope with that, how to adapt to that, develop new skills for getting along with all these new technologies and new features. These were the first 6 of the 12 demands from digital work. The next we have non-availability. That's the feeling that the digital technologies and media required are not available. So you know that there is a technology, a system which would help you, but your employer doesn't offer it. Or you have it once you're in the office building, but you don't have it in the home office. Or you even might have it on your computer, but you don't have the rights, for example, the admin rights, to access that, to use it. That's non-availability. Then we have role ambiguity. That's the feeling that more time needs to be invested in solving problems with digital technologies and media than in actual work activities. So now we're not talking about somebody working in IT, working specifically on IT, whose prime job is it to take care of information technology, but somebody in another department of the company, in marketing, HR, R&D or the like. And they all work with digital technologies and media. And some time of the day, they have to take care of it. They have to take care of some hassles, some interruptions, some unreliability issues or the like. And then they are kind of wondering, am I now doing the work of the IT department or my routine job? This is role ambiguity, not knowing which of these roles you're in. Then we have complexity. That's the feeling that the high complexity of digital technologies and media exceeds one's own capabilities, and that these can only be built up difficulty. So it's this always changing environment, but then also the always more complex environment with more and more systems, more and more interconnections between the systems, which many people can't see through, perceive as too complex, and perceive as themselves to be inadequate for dealing with this complexity. Then we have invasion. That's the feeling that the boundaries between work and private life are increasingly dissolving, resulting in constant accessibility and shorter response time. So that this always on, always connected, permanently online, permanently connected. The invasion of the digital technologies into all areas of your life, and thereby the blurring between private life and work life, which then creates stress. And finally, we have job insecurity and a lacking sense of achievement. Job insecurity is the feeling that losing your job is imminent due to either automation or due to a lack of competence in using digital technologies and media. So either people perceive that they might be automated away, for example, by an artificial intelligence, or that they are just not able to cope with all the complexity, all the speed of change, the interconnectedness and so on of this digital work life, as well as other colleagues who are more digitally competent, more digitally savvy, and that you might lose your job for not being able to handle all the technology and media as well as others. That's the job insecurity. And as said, finally, the lacking sense of achievement. That's the feeling of hardly achieving any work progress or success because this is not very noticeable when you use digital technologies and media. So think about someone working manually. I mean, even if it might be a manual stack of paper, you work from one side of the table to the other, while obviously performing some more interesting work on the paper, like approving things or checking things or so on. But then still you see that the pile of paper moves from one side of the table to the other, and you have a sense of achievement. If you work with digital technology and media, well, then your desk at the end of the day looks the same as at the beginning of the day. Nothing really changed. At least it doesn't spring to your eyes right away. You probably worked on documents. They are somewhere on a cloud server or even on your local hard drive, but you don't see them. You don't see the change on them. You probably worked on many emails, but then new emails come in, so your inbox doesn't change. I mean, specific emails in there, yes, the amount of email and unread email and so on doesn't change. So it's not as easy to perceive the achievements you made during the day, during the workday. And all these different 12 demands are the prime demands from digital work, which create stress for employees, for workers. Now the question comes up, how important is this? What I showed you so far is the ordering of these 12 different factors by decreasing perception of employees. But how strong is the stress arising from these 12 in general? What you see here with these 5 bubbles is the distribution of the overall level of digital stress among these more than 5,000 respondents from the German workforce with samples here. So what you see is a typical distribution if we talk about stress. It's right skewed. So on the left, on the no or very low demands, you have a large share of the respondents. Then if we move to the right-hand side, the very high demands, that's only a very small share. That's a typical distribution you see with stress, also with other forms of stress beyond this digital stress. So overall, if you want to look at it positively, well, then there are 60% who have low demands or even very low or no demands from digital work. So the majority, 60%, for them, it seems to not be a big issue. But if you turn it the other way around, then 40% perceive moderate to very high demands. And these 40% should be cared for as well and should take care of themselves as well. If we go more in depth, if we don't consider the overall demand from these 12 different factors, but if we look at individual factors and see how many employees perceive a very strong demand from at least one of these 12 factors, well, then it's more than 1 out of 3. So more than 1/3 of employees who experience at least one of these 12 factors as very high demand. So overall, that's a prevalent topic in the workforce, and we should take care of these stress levels because excessive stress over extended periods of time has negative impacts, negative work-related impacts, and negative health-related impacts.